No one will ever top Kevin Conroy. Hamish Linklater's pretty good. I'm Batman. What's up, Flick fans? Let's talk Batman the Caped Crusader. I was excited, really nervous about this because Bruce Timm coming back, Matt Reeves as a producer, and we're trying to capture the flavor a bit of the 90s Batman the Animated Series, which is maybe my favorite show of all time. Lofty expectations. Is it good? Let's discuss.
Asking the question on everyone's mind these days, what do you think about the Batman?
You know the premise of Batman. Bruce Wayne becomes something both more and less human. The Batman, he's a one-man crusade for justice, and he's attracting unexpected allies within the GCPD and City Hall, but his heroic actions spawn deadly, unforeseen ramifications. So the biggest plot point, the biggest distinction, and this is why it kind of reminded me of that animated film Justice League: The New Frontier, which is obviously based off of numerous comics that are set in and around that time. Now, this is the 1940s, a period piece at its core, which I believe is cool because you can capture the atmosphere and aesthetic of Gotham in a similar way. It can still look and feel like the Gotham that we know, because as we know, even Gotham in modern times sometimes feels like it could be in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s. And so that was a great way to bring about a cool feel to this show. It feels, for the most part, and we'll discuss what doesn't, but it feels like we're in the 40s. And Batman, and it's not explicitly told to us, but it still feels like he's early on in his days as this character, trying to navigate him in a similar way to what we've seen from a Kevin Conroy. But I believe there's even less of a distinction there when he is Bruce Wayne and when he is Batman, because this version, this 1940s version of Bruce Wayne, he clearly wants to be Batman, because when he's alone with Alfred, not putting on that facade, he essentially escapes to this voice and even calls him Pennyworth throughout this show. Doesn't really refer to him as Alfred. So there's a little arc here with Bruce Wayne trying to do a better job of distinguishing those two things. Of course, when he's out in public, he's not like Robert Pattinson's version. He is the genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, that version of Bruce Wayne that we've seen countless times before. Linklater does a nice job of that, but even sometimes when he's alone with certain characters that aren't Alfred, there's one scene between he and Harvey Dent, he kind of starts to sink back into who he knows himself to be, and that's Batman. And that was really fascinating to see. So at the end of the day, I was really satisfied with his version. At first, I'm like, all right, is this going to work? And then as it went, I got more invested with this interpretation of the character, which I didn't get as much depth as I wanted, but I knew he would be good because we're besties. Not really, but I did take a picture with him, and we had a nice conversation.
Oh, good for you!
Now, before I get into what else works and the excitement that I have for Bruce Timm kind of returning to this world and trying to capture what the 90s show captured, that darker tone, more of what we know of Batman, less trying to fully ground it or fully go chaotic like some of the movies have went. This is kind of the Batman that we know, except it's set in the 1940s, so it has that aesthetic. Before I talk about that and the fact that I did enjoy the show, I want to talk about what doesn't work. And there are a few things that don't work. My biggest criticism is the fact that they often choose to focus on other characters that aren't Batman in a Batman show. And that's cool to a degree. Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, a couple of these side characters. I really like Harvey Dent's arc throughout the entire season, how that culminates. A lot of it is villain of the week type thing. Maybe Harley Quinn is in it a little more than expected. Catwoman's episode was really good. And some villains are in it, and then they don't make it out of the episode. And so fascinating that they made those decisions. So villain of the week, which is fine. That's kind of what Batman the Animated Series was. But the focus oftentimes isn't on Batman. It's on Barbara Gordon or Commissioner Gordon or what's going on in the GCPD. And this could have been just as easily a GCPD show as it is Batman the Caped Crusader. And that, I don't know if that's the decision that I was looking for necessarily. In a way, it makes this world feel a little more well-rounded. But if we could have had Batman in it even more than we did, I think I would have been way more satisfied, because there's an arc there with Bruce Wayne trying to, navigate this crazy life that he's living, his relationship with Alfred, his relationship with someone like a Selina Kyle, who's one of the only characters that he's more open with in public and not fake to, because that's who Bruce Wayne is. But we only get snippets of that. A couple of episodes, we get a lot of it, but the snippets that I was loving and craving more of, maybe that's a tease for season 2, and maybe we get more of that in season 2, and we're going in the right direction. Alas, I was still disappointed in that element of the show. And then you have the fact that it's set in the 1940s, and there are some things about the show that just don't feel like they're from the 1940s. And that kind of threw me off a little bit. I know it's a fake world, it's a fictional world, so you can kind of do whatever you want. But if you're going to set something in the 1940s, you have to make it feel like it's in the 1940s. And those aspects, I was a little like, all right, it feels more like modern day. And those are questionable decisions. But at the end, and even some of the changes that they make, like, Penguin being a female, people are freaking out about. But I actually thought with that first episode, that version of the Penguin worked. But other decisions I question, and I'm like, I don't know if that feels like the 1940s. I've seen some people on Twitter complain, shocking. I know. I've seen them complain about the animation of this show and how there are some scenes and sequences where Bruce Wayne's standing, he's not moving around all that much, this and that. I liked it because it really does feel and remind me of the 90s Batman animated series. It reminds me of what I grew up with. Simplistic in a way, yes, but it still looks good. It looks crisp and clean, and it did everything it had to do. And, Bruce Timm, just everything about the way that this show operates from a visual perspective. Not super in detail, not super in depth. We've seen better animation, yes, but it is the type of animation I like for Batman. So I didn't have much of a problem with it. Again, I mentioned the atmosphere. I believe tonally, this show sometimes goes a little up and down. Some subplots are way more dark than others. I mean, there's one subplot where, there's a certain villain and there are some kids and some crazy things are happening. I'm like, dang, that's getting dark. And Batman is not as easygoing as some versions of Batman that we've seen. If someone, falls and breaks their whatever neck, he's probably just going to be like, okay, they're alive, and go to the next guy and beat them up. And so it's, again, I make comparisons to like the New Frontier and that version. And maybe there's something about, obviously the 60s Batman aside, the early versions of Batman set in the past, that they're just a little more brutal. And this guy's more brutal, man. He's going to do what it takes. And sometimes he's even outmatched, but he always gets back up. And there's a story thread with him that happens in the final episode of the season where he has a decision to make. And part of me, I knew he wasn't going to make that decision, but part of me was like, oh, maybe this is the version that does. And they've given this version of Batman some very interesting things to think about. And going forward into the next season, I mentioned a lot of the villains, from Harley Quinn to Catwoman to who I believe, and a lot of people within the GCPD, by the way, we're not letting these guys off the hook. It's as corrupt and crooked as it's ever been, and I enjoyed this version of Commissioner Gordon and Barbara, who, again, is an integral character, maybe even the main character of the show, which I don't know if that was the best idea, but I really enjoyed these villains. Harvey Dent. We've played this storyline out 1,000 times. We've seen Two-Face, this version, that version, live action, animation. Frankly, I'm sick of it. But even when we get the same storyline again, done in a slightly different way, I liked it. I liked this version of Harvey Dent. They gave him the best fleshing out of any of the villainous characters. Catwoman was a little dynamic, which I appreciated, and they gave her the angle that you always want with a Catwoman. But Harvey Dent, can he be trusted? Here. It also helps that he's being played by Diedrich Baker. Also, the cast in general is really good. You've even got your classics in here, like a Tom Kenny, who plays Firebug. That's one of the characters I was shocked with the result of. But overall, here's what I think Season 1's doing. It's really good in some aspects. I question some elements of the story and how they handled certain things, but they're setting the stage for an exciting Season 2. I love that Matt Reeves is involved. I love that people who care are involved with this character, this version of the character, and it's not on the level of Batman the Animated Series for sure, but it has potential to match up to some of the other shows that we've seen. I enjoyed the presence of Linklater. I just had a good time with this series. It's nice to see Batman in this form once again, episodic, 10 episodes, and I need to know, what did you think of Batman the Caped Crusader? What was your favorite episode? Are you excited for Season 2? And that tease that we get at the end, that was interesting. So before I give you my score, how did you feel about Batman Caped Crusader? Have you binged it all? Are you excited for Season 2? And who is your favorite villain of Season 1? I'd love to know that down below. And if you like this video and you want to drop a thumbs up, that would help. And I'll do more Batman Caped Crusader videos. It offers a somewhat familiar atmosphere in a good way, yet the distinct and timely aesthetic allow it to stand out from recent incarnations. Hamish Linklater is excellent, and this series beautifully builds up characters and provides brilliant and exciting moments for longtime fans. Batman does occasionally feel like a side player in his own series, but it maintains its quality throughout. So, I enjoyed this. I have my nitpicks for sure, like I stated, but I'm excited going forward. Maybe they can fix some of those things, work on some of those issues for Season 2. All right, I'll be back. We're watching Trap this weekend. M. Night Shyamalan. Trap me, Daddy. Oh, gosh.